Great sound. All those kids. Sounds like PBS, right? Word may have gotten out about Linda Rogers, who this last Wednesday, she went through her procedure with flying colors. In fact, the doctors were... Nothing's on? Oh, yeah, that's on. Her procedure went great. She is not in pain. She said she has had no pain. And the doctor says they haven't seen somebody recover so quickly and feel so good after a surgery that he said, well, you can go home. And they've actually had to wait a couple days before getting a flight, but they're coming home today. So Julie is with Linda, Julie Rhodes, who's been taking care of her. And then, Sharon Steele, if you did get that news, she's got, it's a leukemia, a form of leukemia, but it's treatable. And that is very encouraging. And doesn't faze her a bit. She knows in whom she trusts, and the Lord is going to walk her through those procedures and through those treatments as she follows him. And he wants us to follow him, and that's what we're going to talk about today. If you've got your Bibles, I invite you to open to John chapter 1. We've begun a new series in the Gospel of John. And last week we saw that Jesus not only sees a man or a woman for what they are, but what a man and woman can become. Aren't you glad he does it? We saw that as he spoke to one man in particular for the very first time, that Simon, the overly spontaneous, Jesus promised to become Peter, Petra, the rock. We talked about the new names that he has given us, and if we're even aware of those names, have we heard them? Have we sensed that he was giving us a different identity than the one that we've been given by other people or by ourselves, by our own thoughts? And at that time, when Jesus was speaking to Peter, he had chosen 3 disciples. His first 3, who were they? Andrew, Peter, and John. So we pick up at verse 43, where it says, the next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, follow me. Now Philip was from Bethsaida, or Bethsaida, yours might say, the city of Andrew and Peter. Now I've shared before that there are 2 Greek words for follow, and our English translations miss them, which is really tragic because of the depth of what these words mean. The first one, when we read Jesus say, follow me, and it's the word he uses when he talks to Philip, follow me, the word actually means come after. We'd say in our language today, go after. The things you go after are the things you are passionate about. How many of you're going after something? You're pursuing something. People pursue careers, relationships, various things. Jesus says, pursue me. Come after me. Come and get me. That's what he said. Yours just says, follow me. It just doesn't sound as much as it should in English. But he's saying, make me the passionate pursuit of your life. Big difference. There's a second word for follow, and he's going to use it a little later. And the second time he uses it, and he says it to the disciples. The same guys, he goes, follow me, and when he does, it means this. To walk in the way or in the path. It's as if Jesus takes a machete, and he starts hacking his way through the jungles of his life, and he cuts a new path that nobody walks down. And he invites everybody who would follow him to walk in that way or on that path. That's what he said when he says, follow me. Get in the way, literally. Get in the way with me. Lockstep with me. We're going to live differently than everybody else lives. Not those same ruts everybody else is in. We're actually going to love our enemies. Pray for them, those that persecute you. And Jesus walks that path all the way to the cross, where he himself stayed on that path, and he prays, Father, forgive them. They don't know what in the world they're doing, as they're nailing him to the wood. And he does look over his shoulder, and he wonders, are you following? Are you in the path? The greatest single invitation Jesus can make to anybody is to follow him. Because during your life you will ask, Jesus, how do I do this? And his response will be, follow me. And you're going to ask at some point, more than once, Jesus, how do I get out of this? And his answer will be, follow me. And you will ask him, Jesus, what do I do with my life? And his response will be, follow me. Not as a droid, but as a unique disciple. See, each of Jesus' disciples were called to follow Jesus' teachings and his personal example, but Jesus also called them to a path unique to each one of them. I want you to think about it. Peter, he called to walk on water and then to also die eventually as a martyr on a cross of his own. To John, he says, John, here's your path from the cross. Jesus says to John, getting his house in order, he says, John, behold your mom. My mother, my earthly mom, Mary, that's now your mom. You take care of her. You take my place. And then his path included being kept alive, the only disciple not to die a martyr's death, so that he could stay alive long enough to do what? To finish out the Word of God. To receive the revelation from Jesus and write down revelation. Oh my. We are to follow him on a path that is unique to each of us. Now, something we see right away with Philip is that he is a second Andrew. He immediately goes to find somebody else to bring back to Jesus. Look at verse 45. Philip found who? Philip found Nathanael and said to him, we have found him about whom Moses and the law and also the prophets wrote. Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth. And there's that full name of Jesus we talked about last week. Remember I asked you, what's Jesus' full name? Most people don't know. It's actually Yeshua Bar Yosef. Joshua is actually Jesus' name. But translated into our English, it's Jesus, son of Joseph. That's the first and last name. Your last name was your father's first name. Right? Don't forget. So because anybody missed it, it's not Jesus Christ. That's not first and last name. One's a name, one's a title. Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth. So Philip, he was one of 4 men at this point now who were following Jesus, and he grabs number 5, who's a friend. You see, Jews grabbed other Jews to come meet Jesus, but Christians grab non-Christians. At least that's how it's supposed to work. Author John Fisher, in his book, Fearless Faith, he points out that most Christians in this country are as separate as possible from unchurched people. He says that statistics show that 2 years, catch this everybody, 2 years after becoming a Christian, most Christians have lost all normal contact with friends outside the church. Many Christians today can't name one non-Christian with whom they do anything on a regular basis, somebody they would call a friend. Now, some Christians, they say that separation from non-Christians is required in order to live that holy life Jesus calls you to. But I would dare say that perhaps that's a lie of the enemy. That you would have no relationships with unbelievers out of some fear that they may corrupt you. I mean, is that possible? Sure it is. But I mean, I've also seen Christians corrupt other Christians. And you could always bring another Christian with you to an unbeliever you might think might be a little tough. You know, double team them. That's okay. And I want to remind you that no one lived a holier life than Jesus, who was called a friend of sinners because of the company he kept. It's easy to be around those who believe what we believe, isn't it? But it's a different thing to be around those who challenge our faith and whose lifestyle and language may offend us. But as the late Howard Hendricks once said to his students, I can think of no better place for a non-Christian to sit down and light up a cigarette than in the home of a Christian where he or she can hear about and experience the love of God. Did you catch that? He says, I can't think of a better place for a non-Christian to sit down and light up a cigarette than in the home of a Christian where he or she can hear about and experience the love of God. Isn't that how it's supposed to be? Fisher also tells about a pastor who served as a short-term missionary in France. Part of his job was to knock on 4,000 doors and to leave a card that a person could fill out and mail in for a free Bible and a study guide. Out of the 4,000 homes, there was not one response. And reflecting on his experience, the pastor said if he had the opportunity to do it all over again, he would simply move into that neighborhood and love his neighbors. When we were living in Hawaii, a Christian group from the continental U.S., we called the mainland, they came out to meet with every church it could to invite them to raise $2 million to send the Jesus film to every single house in the state. And it would include a response card that people could then mail in to indicate that they've received Christ as a result of seeing the movie. And they would then be interested in attending a church, and then the group would direct new believers who responded on these cards to the nearest church that financially supported the project. And when representatives of the distribution company came to see me, they said that even if one person came to Christ as a result of this mailing, it would be worth it. I disagreed. Yeah, I was actually against the idea. Our church did not get involved. Why? I'm not going to tell you. Yes, I am. First, I wanted Christians, starting with the ones at our church, to go in person and not pay to have a video talk to their neighbor next door about Jesus. I mean, exposing our neighbors to Jesus was our job, not the job of a company a couple thousand miles away. And, if you want to give your neighbor a video, well, you personally give them the video after having built a genuine friendship and sharing Jesus with them. Otherwise, however well-intentioned you may be, you're going to create negative blowback. Let me put it this way. If the Islamic Society of North America mailed a video on the life and teachings of Muhammad to every house in our state, how would you react? You might even be offended. You toss it. You probably wouldn't give it to somebody. You wouldn't give it to, I'm not going to see this, so you give it to your neighbor. You want to see this? You're not going to do that. Let me tell you how Hawaii reacted. Our ministerial association that met monthly and consisted of many churches, most of which gave money to the mailing. After months of waiting after that distribution of the video, not one church reported receiving a visitor as a result of watching the video. Kind of like that pastor in France, his experience. The postmaster attended our church, and he said that the post office had a mountain of videos that had been returned to sender, and that a large number of people were upset. They felt invaded. And that brings me to one more thing I want to share from John Fisher's book. He says, we live in a time when Christians receive a lot of attention in the media, unfortunately not always favorable. In fact, favorable portrayals of Christians today in film and television are almost non-existent. You'd agree. And that can keep people from considering the gospel. Bad impressions don't matter for our sakes, but we should care how they reflect on Christ and the gospel. Some sort of public relations campaign will never change bad impressions. They can only be changed through personal relationships. But that's a problem, he says, because so few Christians cultivate ongoing relationships with non-Christians. Ouch. Everybody say ouch. Back in Hawaii, I also believed, and I still believe, that we could lead somebody to Christ without spending $1. Those folks said, if we spend $2 million and one person comes to Christ, it's worth it. No, I think that's a really bad business. If it costs $2 million to bring one person to Christ, something's wrong. We need to talk. God's plan for reaching the world is quite simple when you come right down to it. It's you and me making friends with people who don't know him yet. Does that cost you anything? Make friends with people who don't know him yet. They're all around you. They're everywhere. I mean, I say this often. Y'all see more non-believers than I do. I'm stuck with a bunch of believers. My job is generally to take care of believers, as the Bible would say, to equip you for the work of the ministry. I mean, I like evangelism. I like to share faith. I like to see somebody come to Christ. We saw it a couple of weeks ago. But how many more people do you know? And unbelievers do you rub elbows with? But do you care? If you care, will you talk? It's you and me making friends with people who don't know him. And it doesn't cost you anything except your time. Your time. We are to do what Andrew and Philip did. Okay, back to the team of disciples that Jesus is building. Who here can name the 12 disciples? Come on. Who can name the 12 disciples? What? There's not one hand in this church? One? Partially? You think about it right now? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, around. Only 2 of those names, Matthew and John. Okay. Here's the problem. When you look at the 4 Gospels, you actually see different names. I'll tell you why. It's because back then you had 3 names. And what they were? These are Jews living in Roman-occupied territory where by law you had to write and speak Greek. You had your Hebrew name, your Greek name, and then your father's name is your last name. And often people just went by their father's name. Just son of so-and-so. You don't even say their first name. You go, hey, son of, out of respect. Or daughter of. That's what they call you. Nathaniel. Nathanael means gift of God. He's one of the 12, even though he disappears from here on out. And he's not mentioned in the other Gospels. But for the scholars among us, let's consider Bartholomew, one of the 12 disciples. His name is not mentioned once in John's Gospel, but in Matthew 10, Mark 3, Philip and Bartholomew are mentioned together. Philip, the guy who went and got Nathanael. They're mentioned together as a team, just like James and John, Peter and Andrew. Well, you see, Bartholomew is actually a last name. Bartholomew, son of Bartholomew. Nathaniel Bartholomew are one and the same. Because Nathaniel Bartholomew, Nathanael Bartholomew, is his full name. Verse 46, Nathanael said to him, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Philip said to him, come and see. So Nathanael, he's from Cana, a different town that Jesus was from. Nazareth was where Jesus was from. That's the proverbial town on the other side of the tracks. It was rough, lower class, undeveloped. Nazareth, I've said this somewhere in the past about it. It was a town that housed a Roman garrison for the northern regions of Galilee, so most Jews wanted nothing to do with that city, and the Jews that did live in Nazareth were thought of as compromisers who were friendly with the enemy. So to call somebody a Nazarene was to use a term of contempt and disapproval. But Nathanael, he didn't understand the prophecies that said about the Messiah to come, that he would have some humble origin. And 3 years from this scene, Pontius Pilate, he's going to have an inscription written on a wooden sign, and he's going to nail it on the cross of Jesus above his head, and that inscription was a slam. It was an insult, and what was it? What was above King of the Jews? Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Because nothing good can come from Nazareth. No king's going to come from Nazareth. That's what he thinks. Well, did anything good come out of Nazareth? You tell me. Now listen, think about this. The world is generally anti-Semitic. It's so like God to make the Savior of the world a Jew. Think about that. I mean, you gotta get humble to acknowledge that this Jew from Nazareth is God on earth. Now, Nathanael, again, he's not impressed with Philip's statement about Jesus being the Messiah. In fact, he's skeptical. And so are your friends when you tell them that Jesus is the Savior. How many of you, as an adult, you became a Christian, and prior to that you were skeptical about who Jesus was? Now, Philip didn't argue, did he? He didn't debate Nathanael. What did he do? He simply said, come and see. Come see for yourself. And dealing with a skeptic takes wisdom. And the wisest thing to do is to invite skeptics to see for themselves. That what you're claiming to be true is true. Tell them that if they really want to know the truth, they're going to go through the work of seeing it for themselves. And that's what Brian Johnson does. By the way, he's going to launch a full-time ministry of apologetics. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, okay? In one of the upcoming weeks here. And what he does, he asks people, use your mind. Here's the facts, but hey, why don't you verify? You do some homework too. You think this is wrong? Do the homework, and then you tell me if it's wrong or right. See, tell people that if they really want to know, they've got to taste and see. They've got to try it. Invite them to pray to Jesus. I'll do that with an unbeliever. I said, do me a favor. Do you ever pray? They usually say no. So do this. I want you to actually pray. I just want you to call, because if you hear, you just call out Jesus. Say, Jesus. And then ask him a question. Give him a request. And see what happens. Then don't fail to connect what happens to what you pray. Tell a skeptic to read about Jesus. Ask a skeptic to come to your church. Tell them, well, just come and try it. And if they label you or Jesus as irrelevant, remember, labeling is the ploy of a lazy mind. They're just being lazy. So, come and see is a good argument. Why? Because if you remember, Jesus said to Andrew and John, come and see. That's what Jesus said. Philip uses those very same words. Hey, come and see. When we ask skeptics to come and see, we're taking our cue from Jesus, who said, come after me. Philip knows he doesn't have to prove anything. Do you know that? Jesus will prove himself to Nathanael if he can get Nathanael close to Jesus. Isn't that your MO when sharing Jesus with an unbeliever? You get the person to come and see, to take steps towards Jesus to see if he really is what he and you say he is, and he will prove it. How did you who became Christians become Christians? Because Jesus himself gave you no proof? You just went on the testimony of other people? I mean, you might as well be in any other religion. Because there is no other God in any religion that's going to prove for themselves, or prove themselves to the pursuer. Our God does it all the time. He does it to you all the time. How often do you pray and he answers? Sometimes he takes a while, because that's his choosing, and he's got some wisdom behind that. There's reasons why he does what he does, and answers the way he answers. Watch. He's going to prove himself right here to Nathanael. All Philip has to do is just get Nathanael close. Verse 47, when Jesus saw Nathanael coming, he's walking. He's going with Philip. Philip said, hey, come with me. You got to meet this guy. All right. Nathanael goes. And when Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. How does Jesus deal with a skeptic? Jesus doesn't insult him for being a skeptic. He simply finds something positive about the guy. And Jesus brings up the man's character and he praises him to his face publicly. Kind of does something to disarm the guy. Jesus pays a compliment to Nathanael that he or any Israelite would recognize. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord imputes no iniquity and in whose spirit there is no deceit. Psalm 32:2. And I'll tell you why I think that meant a lot to Nathanael in just a moment. Verse 48, Nathanael asked him, where did you get to know me? Jesus answered, I saw you under the fig tree right before Philip called you. Now, Nathanael is a bit taken back that anybody would make a statement like he did after meeting him. And he asked Jesus, have we met before? Where did you get to know me? And Jesus said that he had already seen Nathanael under the fig tree. Now, fig trees, leafy, shady trees, and it was customary back in those days to sit and pray under those branches. Nathanael was doing just that when Philip approached him. Verse 49, Nathanael replied, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Is that a response? That should tell us that Jesus was touching on more than just that Nathanael was sitting under a fig tree at the time Philip went to get him, and somehow Jesus saw that. My guess is that Jesus was touching on the very prayer, the very hope Nathanael had in prayer right there that moment, to be righteous before God and to not have any deceit in his life. Anybody pray that kind of a prayer? And I think Jesus was touching on a conversation that took place between Nathanael and God that nobody would know about but Nathanael and God. Something privately spiritual that took place under that fig tree, just as Philip was approaching the tree to fetch him. So Jesus is displaying what we would call a word of knowledge. A spiritual gift spoken about in 1 Corinthians. We can say that Jesus used that gift of prophecy even before this when he was talking to Peter. When he told Peter what he was going to become in the future. Do you remember what the Spirit coming over Jesus at his baptism symbolized? We looked at last week. That Jesus would have on him the Spirit of God, all the empowering, all the gifts that came out of God's Spirit. On him 24/7. If you follow the life of Jesus, you find all the gifts he uses. They just come out. So notice those gifts, what they reveal. The spiritual gifts reveal who Jesus is. Our gifts are to help people see Jesus and experience him through us. But notice, Jesus didn't use any miraculous gifts to convince Andrew. He simply hung out with Andrew, and that was enough to convince Andrew. The encounters Jesus had with people, as he has with each one of us, requires a variety of types as Jesus himself sees it. Some will contain miracles, some won't. So whatever is required. Some people need a little more proof than other people to believe. Jesus has no problem proving himself to anyone. Verse 50, Jesus answered to Nathanael, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under a fig tree? Buddy, I wish it were that simple with everybody." He says, "You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly, I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." What does that mean? Jesus is saying, Nathanael, I can do more than just read your heart and know your whereabouts. I'm going to be for you the ladder that leads to heaven. Jacob's ladder, to be specific. That's what Jesus referred to. Jacob's ladder. It's what the Jews wanted to see ever since Jacob had his experience back in the book of Genesis. Remember that? That vision that God gave to Jacob about the ladder, this portal between heaven and earth at Bethel. He called it the house of God. That's what Jacob named the place. And Jesus is referring specifically to Jacob's ladder, saying that through Jesus alone that the human soul can find that ladder to heaven. Jesus is God's link to earth and our link to God. There's not some magic staircase that you look for that every once in a while becomes visible and you hop on it. Jesus is the ladder. And John, the author of this gospel, he further along records the very words of Jesus when he says, "I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, and no one gets to the Father but by this ladder." Everybody on that ladder? Everybody in this room on it? Everybody in this room trusting Jesus alone to get you there, because there ain't no other way. I'm sorry, you could try something else, other religion, it's going to lead you to the basement. There's only one way to heaven, to the presence of God, only one way out of your sins and the eternal effects of your sin, and that is Jesus Christ. That's the only name that has the power and the authority, all heaven and earth, he is in charge of. That's what Jesus said. All authority. All. How much is all? Means he's calling the shots. It's his rules. It's his way. He's the ladder. Are you on it? In case you're not, just in case. Get on it. Right here, right now, say, "Jesus, I want on." Jesus, I want to trust you with my life now and forever. I want to trust you and your death on a cross paid what I owe for my sins. Teach me to follow you, to walk the path with you, to make you the passionate pursuit of my life as I choose even this morning to go after you. We who are already Christians, we need to say that from time to time. We've got to refresh our own understanding about following him and what it is. To pursue him, pursue Jesus. Walk the way he's walking. Would you bow your heads and pray with me? Jesus, teach us to follow you and to trust that you
more than able to prove yourself to those that we would bring to meet you. And would you help us recommit to the work of sharing the gospel? Lord, would you even put on our minds of somebody, the face of somebody that we need to speak to today or this week, and invite them to come meet you?